Hello, everybody, and welcome into Debate Night. We are back, season number 4. Disc golf is right around the corner. If this is your first time watching Debate Night, we'll welcome into the show. Quick explanation of what we're going to be doing here on Debate Night is we're going to be talking all things disc golf, what's going on, things to be argued about, things to agree and disagree about. We're going to have a number of topics. Our amazing panelists here will be giving their perspectives. I'll be scoring them based on the strength based on the strength and the composition of their argument, and then we'll have a final round at the end to decide our winner. So today's episode is going to be based on the off season. We're going to have kind of an off season recap episode this week. Next week we'll kind of get into a season preview, and then we will be right into the regular season. We are joined today by a great cast. You'll recognize these faces if you watched last season, but stay tuned this year because we have a ton of new names that are going to be joining the show. So many new analysts that auditioned and made the cut. So let's introduce everybody. First of all, Brodie, been on more of these shows than anybody else.
I'm back. Excited. Obviously, I really enjoy the off-season podcast, but it's always good to get some new voices on Debate Night. And we usually don't, because we don't talk really disc golf too much on the off-season podcast. We don't get into too many disagreements or arguments. So I'm excited to kind of get the juices flowing once again.
Absolutely. We got Gary joining us again this year.
Yep, super happy to be back. We're ready to rock and roll. I mean, I'm tired of yelling at the wall. I'm ready to yell at some people. So
all right. And then we got Hannah joining us as well, another familiar face.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be back. Probably won't be on as much this season just because I'm about to be a mom again, but I'm really, really excited for all the new possible cast members that we'll have. And I'm just excited for the Pros Tour season to be back too.
Absolutely. All right. And then Hunter rounding things out for us.
I think what I'm most excited for are the potentials of things I can put behind Gary now that he has a green screen behind him. That's really all that's going through my head right now.
Yep.
That is quite literally a target on his back. All right.
Yeah,
well,
that was an interesting choice. I'm surprised Silas hasn't already done something.
Don't tempt him with a good time. All right. Well, we're going to jump right into things. We're going to start kind of broad, and we'll talk over some other particular subjects as we get into the show here. But for starters here, we're just going to go with your biggest winner and loser of the offseason. This can include players, manufacturers, etc. Just kind of the broad winners and losers of the offseason. For Brodie, why don't you kick it off for us?
So usually I'm pretty good with these topics that I don't have to do too much research, or, as soon as I read the question or the prompt, I kind of have like an answer pop into my head, and then maybe I dig into getting a little bit more stats and facts. This was one that kind of like, it didn't really necessarily stump me, but nothing really popped into my brain. I think we've had some crazy off seasons in a row, like back to back to back, with some big names moving, with some very surprising moves from some people, and from some years where we know someone is going somewhere and we're just like, can't wait for them to announce. This year, I feel like wasn't like that at all. I think this year was definitely a lot more quieter. So a little bit less to choose from, maybe, unless these other panelists have some good answers. I'm going to say the biggest winner to me, I think, might be MVP this year, just because they were the ones that kind of went out and grabbed two guys that were, I guess, free agents, or at least their sponsors weren't really interested in re-signing them. And that is Aaron Gossage and Silas Schultz. And not only is Aaron Gossage and Silas Schultz two guys that can make league cards, can get their name out there, and could potentially even win some tournaments. We saw Silas Schultz and Aaron both compete at majors as well. They both have great social media presence with the practice rounds with Aaron. And I think Silas makes some of probably the best disc golf content we see on social media. And for the biggest loser, I think I'm going to say every player out there that lost their big sponsor. I think if you lost a big name sponsor and you're now with some small retailer, or you're now with some company I've never heard of, that probably hurts really bad. And this is a huge season for you, because if you don't play well, you're probably not going to be on tour next year.
Certainly felt like the Wild West this year. And yeah, MVP continues to make signings that usually a lot of people agree with. Gary, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, biggest losers this offseason are definitely the fans. We went into this offseason with a big hype, 60-plus contracts. We're going to be ending. Chaos was what we were supposed to get. And instead, we got really a snooze fest. The only big move was Aaron Gossage, and a lot of us saw that a mile away. In fact, when he announced he was leaving, they put out their cryptic post, which wasn't cryptic. Everyone knew right away Goose was going there, so that kind of fell flat. And so, yeah, the fans kind of got shafted this offseason. They didn't get the drama. Instead, they got weekly videos saying that the sport was going to be over. So fans were the big losers. As for the winners, yeah, obviously MVP, Aaron Gossage and Silas Schultz, although they didn't promote Silas Schultz to their premier team while they had people like Raven Newsom, James Conrad, and Sarah Hokum up there. So that's he might have been a side loser of that. But the real big winner in my mind, I'm going kind of off the wall here, Whatnot. Right? Whatnot started a while ago with like Brodie ripping cards, turned into Double G, and you got Rathbun there doing disc. But once the offseason hit, every single pro under the sun was running shows on there. You had like Ricky, AB, Calvin, Paul Macbeth, you had Paige, Holland, and Missy, like every single major pro, and all the fringe players were selling. And now suddenly Casey White or Emily Weatherman, they can support themselves because they can sell disc and engage with fans in a way they've never been able to do so before. I mean, it even rippled through the retailer space and the private sales space. For goodness sakes, I sell on Whatnot. But it created opportunities for players.
Yeah, certainly a lot of plastic to be moved out there.
Did we lose Gary, or is that just on my screen?
Yeah, I mean, he went out on like the main feed, but I think we can. I don't know.
I think it was just as soon as he promoted his own Whatnot, just
yeah, I was about to say that.
Got absolutely juiced. That's just, I don't know. I don't know if it's correlated. It was a very interesting timing on my end here.
He's like free ads. That's
he's
sure.
like, man, who's a winner? Like, Whatnot, man.
Who's a winner? My bank account, man. My Whatnot. I'm going live tomorrow night.
Huge. You don't know about our firewalls we have. They are incredible. All right, Hannah, who's your biggest winner and loser from the offseason?
Yeah, so I think overall for the winner, I was leaning towards MVP as well. I mean, I love a lot of the hype stuff that Discraft put out. Like, I thought that was really cool. Maybe it was cheesy to some, but I think those are really cool. But I think overall with off-season marketing and with all of these, is it Aaron Gossage? It is, but we're not going to say it. Is it Silas Schultz? Who are the other silhouettes in the posts? Like, what days, who's dropping what day? Like, I think MVP did a great job at keeping the hype alive, even if we're all just kind of like, we kind of know, but they kind of played into it, I think, really well. And I think it's worth mentioning, too, that they also picked up Ida Amelia Nesse, if I'm saying that right, and Cal Longquest, two really young performers in the sport that we've seen a ton of promise from recently. And I think they just add to this huge repertoire of varying degrees of talent and ages and specialists and everything that MVP has. So obviously Silas Schultz, Aaron Gossage, two huge pickups for them, but I think it's worth noting some of the younger players as well, because they're kind of the future of the sport. And I think MVP gives them a great platform to grow into. My loser of the season is actually Joey Tamale. For some of you who may not know, he was dropped by MVP recently, and MVP was also the sponsor of the podcast he does with Eagle McMahon and Simon Lizotte. But Joey is one of the biggest names in disc golf that people have probably never heard of. He does so much behind the scenes as far as content creation and brand work. And so to see him get dropped by a big partnership feels like a huge loss to MVP, but hopefully he's able to still put something together this season for his own gain on the tour as well as his side projects.
That one kind of did surprise me. I feel like he was kind of tied in pretty deep with them, but yeah, dropped nonetheless. All right, Hunter, wrap it up for us. Your biggest winner and loser.
This is a blessing. I think that the other contestants here just showed some off-season rust, which I'm very grateful for because this absolutely fell into my lap. The reason the off-season was boring, Gary, the reason that everyone just missed the biggest off-season storyline is Discraft kept the super team. The whole reason the offseason was supposed to be crazy was because Discraft was supposed to be losing potentially Adam Hamez, Ezra Ritterhold, Holland Hanley, Missy Gannon, Paige Pierce. Like, everyone was supposed to leave, and they had all these, and they kept them all. How the frick did they keep them all? Discraft's the biggest winner by a landslide, and also the biggest loser, chef's kiss. Thank you. Everyone seems to forget that Kristen Lott left Latitude 64, and Latitude 64 had to replace her. This was the offseason they had to, because she made up a majority of their disc sales. Yeah, they have Isaac, but losing Kristen, this was the offseason they had to pick up a Holland Hanley. They had to pick up a Missy Gannon, a Paige Pierce. Instead, they picked up an Annika Steen. Great signing, but not to replace a Kristen Lott. That is not, we're not even on the same playing field there. They just lost a huge chunk of their USA and their Europe market with not being able to replace her. And the reason they couldn't replace her is the same reason it was boring for the fans, is because Discraft apparently is the GOAT. They just kept everyone and then somehow convinced Evan Smith, the 15th best player in the world, to come join their tour team instead of their elite team. Like, that's crazy. Discraft had an all outstanding offseason.
I was looking at you with a face of confusion I've seldom seen in my life.
It's a bad answer. Bad answer.
Yeah.
Kristen still works with Latitude 64. She's doing disc reviews for them.
They just did a video with her.
Yeah, and it's Annika Sten.
Oh, she's. I thought she retired. Did I miss something? I'm sorry. I thought she was done playing. Take some points away from me if she's still playing, Trev.
She's taking over events in Europe. She's joining coverage.
Because tournament directors move as much signature discs as the best player in the freaking world. What are we talking about, people? They lost the all-time GOAT from playing. And we're trying to say, oh, she's going to sell 50 players packs. What?
Yep.
What are we doing? Guys, this is debate night. Wake up. Holy cow.
Yeah, being loud doesn't make the answers any better, because
it makes the host smile,
she's
Gary.
Still beloved amongst all the fans. In fact, I'd say love for Kristen has even gone up since this.
Also, Latitude would have had to sign like 7 of the top 7 players to replace her. No one's close in the FPO that sells as much plastic as Kristen.
No, but you do have to think, if they could have gotten Holland, which I think is the next best thing, who was free this offseason.
No, Discraft doesn't let their players go if they want to keep them.
But I'm saying there was a lot of speculation Holland was leaving. There was a lot of speculation.
Discraft let 2 players go. They let Gossage go and Corey Ellis, a major winner. They let 2 players go. They didn't keep everyone.
I'm just saying, I would be surprised if Holland got an offer from Latitude 64 that was close to Kristen's offer. I don't know if she stays with Discraft.
They're not sending that offer to her.
There was a lot of sensationalist stories.
Clearly they didn't, because they lost.
Why would you do that? Why would you lose money? You're a company. You're trying to make money. Why would you lose money?
Hey, I was asked who is the biggest winner and who is the biggest loser. I think I made a pretty compelling case there.
Kristen's still big enough that even if she doesn't play a single event next year that's publicized, she's going to make them so much money and bring them so much notoriety.
Kristen, I think will be forgotten in 2 to 3 years if she's not playing.
They're getting the same production for a pay cut. Also, Evan
Smith. The same production.
Evan Smith.
Crazy. That's a crazy take.
Earmark this. Earmark this. I want to come back. I got the data. I got the data.
I didn't say that. Hunter,
I want this earmarked for Gary. Gary is just as much a part of tour life as anyone else at this point. So I want this earmarked. Tour life says the same production from Kristen.
Ripwalk podcast.
Evan Smith, he's pulling back from the tour. I'm sure he didn't have to be strong-armed into that position.
I'm just saying he was strong-armed. First off, I do believe that. But secondarily, had he got the elite team contract, is he still pulling back from tour? That's the type of question people aren't asking.
He's having a baby this summer, isn't he?
He already made the decision.
Yeah, he had already made a decision. Gary is right in that one.
All right, everybody. We are coming out firing this year.
I wasn't coming after Gary there. I was just saying the situation that Evan Smith got himself into. He had already made a decision before the Discraft Tour team.
Okay. A lot being said there. Let's move on to our next topic here. Let's see if this gets everybody as stirred up. We're talking about the European Open. So the European Open obviously was a big deal because we had the announcement of the Europa Cup. And then it was rescinded with an announcement from the PDGA. So the European Open will return to disc golf with its iconic name and branding, although at what cost? Does the president of the PDGA acquiring this licensing to better serve the fans worry you? Or does this speak to their commitment to do what is necessary for the betterment of the sport's history and continuity? You know, should we be really criticizing them for this or praising this? What kind of precedent does it set? Gary. We cannot hear Gary. Oh, there we can.
History is super important when it comes to these events. And if you pull up every major podcast or disc golf discussion, we've been saying we want history. It's important. Look at Winthrop. We want history. And so when you then you see the change to the Europa Cup, any arguments now that moving back to the European Open name is bad and doesn't matter is disingenuous to what we were all fighting for before that. And do I love that we had to have the name change and then it has to be brought back? No, I don't love that. Do I love the idea they had to pay for that? No, I don't love that either. But the European Open team, they wanted to make this thing work. And I think that it's great that we're keeping the name because the cost may have been high. Although if you talk to certain people at the PDGA, I've been led to believe the cost wasn't as high as anyone thinks it actually was. And we already have two majors now that rotate. One of them we don't understand the identity for, and we have less bids coming in for majors than ever before. So having some degree of consistency with the name, I think it does less to muddy the waters in the history of the game we have, even though our game is extremely young in the terms of how long sports are. The brass tacks is, guys, the newsletter had to die for this to happen. So let's show some respect for the fallen editorial and move on. But now the Europa Cup has been able to be used for a brand new major they're doing for amateurs in Europe. And so they're growing the sport with the name change. I think it's great. It's going to be an A-tier this year. It's going to be a major next year in Europe. Yeah, we can't speak out of one side of our mouth that we want history and then be like, we don't want it now that we have it.
Yeah, fair points. Hannah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily worry me or like they're setting some kind of weird precedent. I will say, though, it feels kind of awkward that the PDGA has to almost buy back or pay to license a name of one of their biggest events all year because you're the PDGA, you run the majors. Why don't you own the names to these things or at least the licensing agreement to keep it going for years and years? Because, I mean, we just celebrated Super Bowl 60. We want to be able to celebrate the European Open 60 too, right? Like we want that history and that notoriety to stay. It would be like the USDGC suddenly becoming the American Open Championship. And then suddenly Gannon is like a 3-time USDGC champion and a 1-time American champion, but they're the same event. Like it feels awkward that they were even in that position to do a name change or have to like buy it back in some way. But I'm very glad that they did so because I think it is important for the history of our sport. It helps it put like a focal point on how important an event is. And it gives some, it's like a string that people can take all the way back in the history of sport to go, oh, the European Open's been going for this many years and this person's this many time European Open champion. And it allows for some consistency in a sport that's ever growing and still, like Gary pointed out, very new in the grand scheme of things with all sports. So I think it's very important that they kept the name, but I don't think there's any weird concerns or precedent as a result of it.
Yeah, it certainly makes the timelines a lot less muddy when we're looking back and trying to track things. No doubt about that. Hunter, do you feel like there's any reason for concern here?
Yes, I do. First off, I must say I was one of the main people, probably the loudest voice, pushing for why the heck don't we have the European Open name. And I think that you asked the most important question in the question, which you said, at what cost? Because I think that's really what we're asking here, right? Because the PDGA, in my opinion, made the wrong move for the right motive here. I think the real play was to go public with the fact that, hey, we want to use the name European Open. We don't want to use Europa Cup, but House of Discs is not allowing that to happen. So if they are willing to change their mind, we will make the decision to be the European Open, because that would allow the public to put pressure on. Instead, my main concern here isn't about this year's event or next year's event, but the future event, because everyone's talking about history, which is very right. And that's the correct point. And that's my point I was making pre-European Open. But we're also a very young sport. So with the licensing agreement, we're building onto the history of a name that the PDGA still doesn't own. And while it may be cheap right now, what happens 10 years from now when the PDGA still doesn't own it? And now there's 10 more years of history, and the whoever owns it, Discmania, whoever owns the European Open rights, now has 10 more years of reason to raise the price 10x, 20x, whatever they want to do. And the longer that goes on, the more they can raise it. That's more my concern here. Is I don't like Europa Cup. I don't like the name of it, but I think that there was another solution that could have been made that hopefully gets us the European Open without putting us in a potentially bad spot a decade from now.
Yeah, there's definitely has to be the question asked of what is that price going to be when this contract expires? Is it going to start to exhaust resources that should be allocated elsewhere? Always a cost with these things. Brodie, wrap it up for us. What do you think about this situation?
Well, one thing that I think a lot of you guys said that I think is very interesting is I keep hearing you guys talk about how young disc golf is and how disc golf hasn't been around for a long time. At what point is it no longer young? At what point has disc golf been around? Because I think I hear a lot of people talk about that, and I wonder if that is because disc golf isn't where ideally you think it should be. Because in other sports that are fairly new, that get very, very popular, you don't hear it as much, or at least you hear it at the beginning maybe, but then eventually it goes away and people don't keep talking about, oh, this is such a young sport. We're so new. And that makes me kind of believe that I don't think anyone on this panel really trusts where the upper people that are controlling disc golf is taking it. Because if you did, I don't think you would keep saying like, well, we're a young sport. We need to take some time. And because like the Disc Golf Pro Tour has been around for quite some time. Now, obviously it's changed a little bit, but at a certain point in time, you kind of have to look and say, hey, do we need different people leading us? And I've always said, it's hard for me to put faith into the PDGA. And I also would love to know each one of your guys' number of what too much money would have been if we got that number for acquiring this. Because obviously there is a number out there. If they paid $1 million for the European Open name this year, we can all agree that's way too much. So I would love for all you guys to answer what number is too much.
It's got to be one of the more fascinating.
Where's your line?
Because like, how do you they have to like try to assign intrinsic value to their name as they're trying to sell it to the PDGA, and it kind of
I wouldn't pay more than $5,000 for it, Trevor. That's my line.
Well, that's what to me.
More than that. 5 years, Brodie, or 1 year?
1 year. I would not pay more than $5,000 for 1 year.
So because this was 5 years, you're okay with the spend being 25 grand?
My real problem is that it is 5 years.
I think
because it's only 5 years.
I think 25 grand for 5 years would be probably where I would be at.
Lifetime.
That's what I'm saying. I would have a lot less problem with this if this was a 20 grand one-time purchase. Bought it out.
Mm-hmm.
The licensing is my whole problem with it, because at some point, like, let's say
someone else could take it. Go Throw could pay more, could bid him out.
Yeah, well, they're not in, that's what I'm saying. They're not in control, and then you get where the sport is. Now we have 30 years of history of the European Open. The sport's grown a bunch, and all of a sudden you have the disc golf, live golf version come in, and they're essentially buying the Masters.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we doing? But like the PDGA can't do anything about it. So then all of a sudden it's like, well, does the name hold all the mystery around it? Or is it just that the PDGA ran the major? What, like seriously, imagine that if Live Golf came in and next year the Masters was on Live Golf. It wasn't a major anymore. And now the April major was just called Champions Cup. Like all of a sudden, what's the feeling there? Like, because the name holds so much of the prestige. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's more my concern. Isn't necessarily what we paid today or anything like that. It's just they still have full control over the major without running it. It's the best deal of all time for House of Discs and whoever owns European Open.
Well, also this tournament could suck.
It also could suck.
It's not the same people running it.
Well, but it's the European Disc Golf Festival. It won't suck this year. 4 years from now, it might suck. Who knows
No,
where,
no,
where
but
it ends up.
I'm saying the European Open previously was run by UC and his team.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you knew what you were going to get, and it was going to be good. What tournament is what tournament changes who kind of runs it as far as like the people behind it year after year that the PDGA also owns?
Worlds.
The World Championship.
Yeah.
Some years we talk about how awesome Worlds are. Some years we're like, that tournament sucked. That was really poorly run. And so that's the other thing is like next year, okay, because I know you're saying the Disc Golf Festival is going to take care of it, but the year after that, you know what I'm saying? Is
No, I get what you're saying.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Every year we know USDGC is going to be good. It's going to happen, going to be good. It's going to be taken care of. And this is now another major that we do not know the future of. And that's kind of scary. And we're also paying money for it.
That's until was it UC just said he's going to have a big announcement coming out here in a couple days, or maybe this with being Nate Heinold's last year on the board, he's going to take over as the major director, and
he's teasing something. It'll be interesting we might be talking about that next week.
To the old sport thing though, like I think 100 years makes sense in my head, right? But like where I think the sport is so young comes from is our main tour is 10 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like no one would say live golf is old, to go back to that, but golf is.
So you think the UFC is young then too?
In the scheme of sports, yeah, I'd say UFC is young.
I would say it is. I would say
but
it is.
No one really says that though. Is what my point is. No one.
But the UFC also hasn't gone through as much change.
People have been talking about UFC as an up and coming sport, a buy high or buy low sport for like the last 5 years.
No, that was back
when I was in college.
That was back in like the Conor McGregor world of where he put the sport kind of on the map.
That was like 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
But to Hunter's point, it hasn't gone through the leadership changes.
Conor was fighting when I was in college.
No, before that though is what I'm saying. Is before
maybe like
that,
a couple
Conor.
Years. I mean, I don't think it was.
All I'm saying is like at a certain point, you can't just keep saying our sport is young. Our sport is young, and that's what I'm saying. Is like at a certain point, the sport is no longer young. And what is the reasoning for that? And I think a lot of times the reasoning for that is the success in the sport. When the sport has year after year of success, people normally don't say, oh, the sport is really, really young. Maybe in the first year, it's surprising because it's like, wow, the sport's so young. But that
definitely is a crutch. There's a crutch there for sure. I could see how, like, I do agree that I think the sport is just by technical term, like relatively young. But I could see us 20 years from now saying the same thing, and it's more of like maybe we're just saying it because.
And that's what I'm saying. At that point, you have to see what is the common denominator. What is the thing that is consistent over the decades that the sport's been around? And if there's one thing that's kind of holding it back,
probably a part of it is just a language thing. Because when I talk about the sport being young, I'm talking about the professional side, where like the tour in general didn't start till what 2005? Is that right? 2003?
There was still professional disc golf way back.
But I'm talking about like when I talk about the sport being young, I'm talking about the pro side. You know what I'm saying? To where like. The tour didn't establish until realistically the tour is, as we know, the pro tour literally started in 2016. So we're a decade in, right? And like when you look at that, if you use the UFC example, the UFC started in 1993. So like from that standpoint, they're 33 years old there. I don't know. I think that's in my head. It's just more talking about the pro, because I would agree that disc golf as a whole. I don't know if I would agree with the statement disc golf as a sport is young. I do agree with the statement that like disc golf as a professional like media sport is young. If that makes sense. That might not make sense.
Well, because for me, I'm 27 and I've been playing disc golf longer than our current iteration of the Pro Tour has existed. So that to me is like, it's new still. But I think part of that, or I wonder if for some people, part of that narrative comes from the fact that it feels like, newer sports like pickleball have just gained so much traction so quickly. And it feels like disc golf is still like scratching and clawing and grinding to be recognized as a legitimate sport and entity. And I think that kind of keeps that, we're new because we're struggling and we haven't really found our sure footing yet in a lot of people's minds.
Certainly.
Yeah, I think that's Brodie's point there.
Well, yeah, and the other point I want to make too is like I was actually kind of dumbfounded at the Austin Marathon, there was 30,000 people that were in it. Obviously, not everyone paid their entry fee because obviously some, I guess, were no, I probably everyone actually paid. Some were maybe paid by sponsors, but yeah. So 30,000 people. The entry fee was over $300, but we'll just say $300. This is again no outside sponsor at all coming in. That's $9 million paid. Now, obviously, they did have to shut down a whole part of the city, and I'm sure that's very, very expensive to do all that. The prize pool for the pros was $20,000.
Yeah.
The winner received about, on average, off of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, the winner received about $8,000 less than the winner on the Disc Golf Pro Tour receives for a win. So when you look at it too, like I don't know. It's just interesting because people don't talk about like running is like, oh, it's such a young sport.
No, that point is I've talked about that several times where
disc golf like very far in advance for where it's at as far as
I think disc golf is somewhat broken, not necessarily the pro scene, but the am side where like, yeah, if I go run a race in general, yeah, the pro payout is obviously laughable, right? Yes. I don't really understand. That doesn't really make sense to me in general because every race is like that. Like professional runners are just purely off of sponsorship. They never make money at races.
Very similar to disc golf.
But yeah, but the big difference is like I'll go pay like you pay $300 to run the Austin Marathon. You got a t-shirt and maybe a swag bag, right?
Yeah, a
like
medal.
You probably got $50 worth of stuff. Maybe that's being generous.
You get a medal, and then you obviously are paying for the road closure.
Yeah,
you're paying for all the.
Yeah, you pay for the experience, but that's what we miss in disc golf. Is the experience in disc golf tournaments has $0 value? Because if you paid $300 to go play Ledgestone, you better walk away with a Zuka cart, some new shoes, and 20 discs. You know what I mean? And it's like you're
also playing a 5-hour round at Ledgestone sounds awful when you can play there. I think that's the big thing. Is like I will never be able to run the streets of Austin with thousands of people cheering me on, but I can go out and play. Now, obviously, Ledgestone might not be the best example because it is a great course,
doesn't exist.
But Northwood Black, I could go out and play that and not have to spend 5 hours of waiting. But the competition,
around. That's like saying I can go play pickup basketball, but like that's different than going into a 3v3 tournament. You know what I'm saying? My problem with the disc golf side is the tournament. The tournament directors aren't incentivized because you do the whole weekend of work. This is the grassroots level. You do the whole weekend of work for pennies on the dollar because you have to provide a good players pack, because we've created a culture where if I don't spend the money and get the same in the players pack, it's worthless to me, and there better be a banging payout. Versus a race, like there are race directors that run like 2 races all year, and that's their living.
Yeah.
And that's it. But they can. In disc golf, you can't do that. And that's also, I think, a big part that hinders the growth, in my opinion, is because then your best tournament directors aren't going to run events. So then we have a world's bid go up, and it's like you have no experienced tournament directors because the best tournament directors are directing other sports.
They're burnt out, too. So many good tournament directors over the last, 2 or 3 years have stopped.
Yeah.
Because it's just been so much on them.
That's the problem I think the PDGA should be trying to solve.
I think the majority of people that play disc golf, though, do not find it fun to play super long rounds.
The majority, yeah. Statistically, absolutely.
Where
it depends a little bit, though. If you're going to a local tournament and you can request to be on a car with your buddies, you care a little less about how long the round is.
Sure.
All right. And that was talking European Open with the
squad.
I was like, I don't even remember what we were talking about.
It's been a long off season. We're just getting back into the flow here.
Everybody's pent up. All right. We're going to talk about the Pro Tour a little bit more here. Our next topic more related to their personalities. So the Disc Golf Pro Tour will have a major shakeup in the commentary booth this season, largely stepping away from personalities such as Ian Anderson and Terry Miller, while adding some like Kristen Lott for feature events on the mic. Do you see this as more of a popularity, political, or financial related move? Also, what impact do you think commentary has on the broadcast? Is it an overrated or underrated factor when it comes to viewership, retention, and just the overall viewership in general? Hannah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so, I don't think all of the criticism that Ian, Terry, and others get is fair or warranted. I do think that this change is due to the PDGA or the Pro Tour listening to feedback or kind of seeing the opinions around and trying to make a change or adapt to make a better product based on that. The reality is, if something's not working, then it's not working, and we should be okay with changing that or trying new things, even if it gets uncomfortable. And if we look at other sports too, if we think of even the GOAT himself, Tom Brady, when he started calling games, people thought he was terrible. And then this year, he's like now a fan favorite because he put in a lot of work to improve himself on the mic for these games. And so I think that when we think of commentary for like DGN specifically, I think we allow ourselves to be okay with so-so commentary, because who, as a casual fan or a random outsider of disc golf, is discovering DGN first? You're not. Your first representation of disc golf commentary is probably Jomez. But just because it's that case does not mean that it's okay for commentary on DGN to just be whatever consistently through the years without changing or evolving in any way. And so I think that to reach the larger market, you do have to be willing to adapt and to try out new personalities and to change things, even if our current people have done incredible things for the sport. Commentary is not going to be a main reason why people watch DGN, but it's going to determine if they stay watching it or not, and how often they come back to watch that product.
Yeah, certainly plays a role, and it can keep people interested, no doubt about that. Hunter, what do you think about the commentary shakeup?
I think that the decision here was a mix of financial and popularity. I think it's probably more financial than anything else, and I'm glad Dustin and Rich aren't on this episode because they're not going to like the next sentence out of my mouth, but I will explain what I'm about to say. I think commentary, for the most part, only has tangible negative effects. So the only effects you can really feel from commentary, in my opinion, are negative. And what I mean by that is, if the commentary is great, then it draws you into the coverage more and blends in to where you don't even really think about the commentary, right? Like, it almost becomes a part of what you're watching, versus bad commentary breaks it up and takes you out of the drama, doesn't build it, it just sucks you right out of it, and then all you can think about is the commentary. So I don't think for your typical people, I'll talk about special things in a second, but for your typical Terry Miller, Ian Anderson, stuff like that, I don't think they're going to be the reason someone chooses to watch, but they very well might be the reason someone chooses not to. So that's the popularity side. But the financial side, I think, is a lot more on trying to cut down travel costs. Because I think cutting down on travel costs is going to be a huge thing for the Pro Tour here, where they can just use people local to it. But where I do think that commentary has a tangible good effect is Kristen is a somewhat good example. Having her on, I think there are going to be people that are interested to hear what she has to say. The best example of this would be if all of a sudden the next week the Pro Tour had Simon Lizotte in the booth on there. I think a lot of people are tuning in because they want to hear Simon Lizotte's commentary. So I think the right personality added in there does bring some tangible value, but just day to day, I think the most commentary, if it's good, just kind of blends in and sucks you into the drama, if that makes sense.
Okay, strong take there, Brodie. Do you agree?
Yeah, slightly. I'll do a little different point to Hunter's here. Is I think you have to look at it through two lenses. You have to look at it through the lens of people that are watching and know what they're looking at, and people that are watching and don't know what they look at. Because I watched some Ultimate Frisbee the few weeks ago, and I thought the commentary was terrible because they were missing things. They were they were not saying things correctly. Thought it was awful. However, if I turn on alpine skiing in the Olympics, I have no idea if it's good or bad. I think it's fine. Like, I've never turned in, even the NFL, like sports that I have somewhat knowledge of, because I'm not like deeply rooted in it and I played it and I know exactly what's going on. I don't really have an idea. So I don't know. I think sometimes the commentators in disc golf, when it's on social media and stuff, I think sometimes the voices that are coming out might be voices from people that have a little bit more knowledge, I guess. But I'm with Hunter in the sense that a lot of times the commentary can just be bad. Like, it's very rare that someone is going to, I mean, I think Ken Climo at USDGC is another great example of someone that really adds to the coverage, having him in the booth with his knowledge of the course. But a lot of times it's just bad, and I think Terry actually fit well. I just didn't think Ian, if we're talking about those two, I don't think Ian ever was able to find the role that he was supposed to have. That was, I think, the big issue is you got to have someone that brings you in and out of commercials, that rolls you into the next clip, and then you have your person over here kind of filling up the color. And I feel like those were kind of muddy waters, and that's why it didn't really work.
No doubt, no doubt. All right, Gary, what do you think about the commentary shakeup?
Kenny is great in the booth as long as he's not spoiling Simon Lazat's next baby announcement. But the situation with Terry is honestly, I think it's not what it seems. I know there's some information going around that there might have been a miscommunication. We're going to get Terry more than we actually think we are. So that's a good thing. But I'm saying, I'm agreeing that it's definitely going to be a combination of financial and popularity kind of thing, because the popularity thing makes total sense for Kristen, especially because getting her in the booth, it's a win-win for everybody, because it's a win for her. It allows her to reinvent her new purpose within disc golf. It keeps her front facing for fans who love her, because people love the heck out of Kristen. It's why she's going to sell discs. But even though Ian was popular among some people, I think more fans than not are going to be very receptive of this change. It doesn't take away what Ian's done for the sport of disc golf. I mean, Central Coast was how I, along with so many other people, learned about professional disc golf. And that intro song, I've never said the word pterodactyl so many times in my entire life. But the financial reasons are obvious. It's the booths, the location, the travel costs. It costs money to get people there. So I think this is a kill two birds with one stone scenario. We can knock out one of our less popular options and save money at the same time. So it's a win-win for them to do that. And for the impact on the broadcast stuff, yeah, I feel like it's very rare that great commentary adds anything. Maybe for big moments, it can be like the cherry on top of the sundae, but most of the time it's just detracting from broadcast if it's bad. And I think if your camera work and your production is crispy and sounds good, commentary is less important unless it's terrible. But if your production's awful, I think commentary can carry a little bit of weight when it needs to.
Yeah. I think even a lot of the best commentators out there would say that, they know when a call is good or bad, but their goal is to, just accentuate a moment. And a lot of times the best commentary is them not saying anything at all and letting things breathe. And I can't tell you, have we ever really looked at a disc golf call and said, oh, what a call that was? Like that was such a good call. Like,
the Nate Dawes holy shot comes to mind.
There was one moment for me.
Memorable.
There was one moment for me that I really like. I always point to. It was at the Champions Cup this past year, where there was a huge shot that I forget who was the one throwing it. But Nate Sexton showcased, in my opinion, what it's supposed to be. Before the shot happened, he characterized why this shot's difficult. The shot happens, and he stays completely silent through 2/3 of the flight of the disc. As it approaches this tree that it has to get past, he makes one note of it's got to get past that tree. So it gives the fans a clue as to what they should be looking for. Then it waits until the disc comes to rest and then commentates on how hard the shot was to execute. Like, we have moments like that, but there are so many commentators who just can't help themselves but talk through every single part of the flight.
To be honest, I think that a thing that doesn't get mentioned enough in disc golf, in my opinion, is that if you look at our commentary teams and where they all came from, they all have come from their own fast-paced post-produced coverage.
Yeah. Jomez is the killer of actual live commentary.
Where you have to fill every second because it cuts to a throw happening. And you know what I'm saying? There is no time to breathe in a 20-minute round of coverage. And that's where Ian Anderson comes from, a Central Coast, Terry Miller with the disc golf guy. So I think that it's a very unnatural thing for those guys to then get in a 4-hour long round and have to let something breathe. It feels very against their nature and how they were trained, in my opinion.
Yeah. Everybody has their own style for sure.
It's a companion stream is what and there are some people out there that like to watch sports or movies with other people around that are talking throughout, being like, I think a majority of us don't, though. If I'm watching a movie, do not talk to me about the movie while the movie's happening. And I think disc golf commentary live can learn a little bit about that, as the majority of us don't want to hear talking just to be here talking.
We're paying to watch the disc golf, not to hear you speak.
I think that's something that they've kind of struggled with is, no offense to any of the commentators or anything, but
defend
they've
him.
not really
Offend him, Hannah.
changed.
Go on.
Yeah,
the,
send me
the
a
style
picture.
hasn't.
Call him out.
The style of commentary hasn't changed
No,
in all
you're
these several seasons of however long they've been doing
1,000%
it,
right.
and that's where we get the
Ian
problem.
Well, Hannah,
Philo.
disc golf's young, so
Ian and Philo have sounded like Ian and Philo, no doubt.
It's just cheese
okay.
on bread, man.
Just cheese on bread. Well, the cheese on our bread, our final topic before our finals, is going to be about the Pro Tour as well. This is kind of a bomb they dropped pretty recently, announcing Powerball as their presenting sponsor for 2026. A big presenting, overarching sponsor, basically being the face of the tour and the championship. Now, what is it? The Powerball Cup, I believe we're dealing with now.
Yep.
They're kind of overarching the standings. A real FedEx Cup type deal here. So this sets a new benchmark for tour partnerships and integrations. I just want to know your initial take on this deal. Any big pros and cons? What are you feeling about this announcement? Because a lot of people just don't really know what to think about this one. Hunter.
Yeah, I think that a big pro of this, in my opinion, is that they actually sold it. Right? Like, I think that this is something that we've heard about for a while. We've even talked about why hasn't the tour sold something like the FedEx Cup. And here we are, you know, if you go on Disc Golf YouTube, you see doom and gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom, and the Pro Tour is making the biggest sponsorship deal in the sport's history, right? I think that is a big pro of this. Now, we don't know the numbers, but typically you can kind of tell how big of a deal monetarily something is by how excited and loud the people are that are involved with it. And the Pro Tour seems to be very excited about this one, and they seem to be very much in front of like, hey, this is the biggest deal we've ever signed. I think when you're saying it that many times, it can either be so small that you're like really hoping the number doesn't get out, or it's so big that you're like actually proud of it and you're just itching for it to leak because you want people to know. I'm gonna be a hopeful optimist that it's the second, right? But I think that I do think it's a pretty big deal money-wise. I think the big question here that's in the back of all of our minds is, can they retain it, right? We've seen LL Bean come in. We've seen Barbasol come in. We've seen Columbia come in at different points in the sport. Can they, when this deal is up, I know it's a multi-year deal, sign them again or replace them? Can this be something that stays? I think that'll be big. And the secondary thing that I think is going to be very big is what changes for me as a viewer or what changes for me as a spectator. If there are tangible changes there, I think that's also going to be huge for the sport. If nothing changes and we lose them, then I think this is pretty bad.
Yeah, easy. It's one thing to get the fish to bite once, but can you get him a second time? That has definitely been something we've always been watching with the Pro Tour. Brodie, what do you think about this Powerball deal? Does it mean much to you?
I'm going to relate this a little bit back. I think I've talked about this on Tour Life before, but not here. So I'm going to relate this a little bit back to my YouTube days and the word sellout and how certain creators got that word thrown around and really suffered their content as far as their fans were concerned moving forward. And so that was always a big concern for a lot of people at the beginning of YouTube, where companies were coming in and saying, hey, we don't want to just put an ad on your video that just pops up that we all have to, wait 15 seconds to watch. We want you in your video to break up your normal content and to sell our product. And there was two ways that this was done. This was done in one way, which was a sellout money grab way of just popping in and saying something to the camera about the product and basically making an ad. Now that has become pretty traditional now on the YouTube space. A lot of people do that. But when it first was starting, no one really liked that. Or the brand comes in, gives you a bunch of money, and you make the content even better. And you basically say, guys, I'm doing something that I would not have been able to do if it wasn't for this brand to sponsor. And the fans really appreciate that. And I think, going to Hunter's point, that ultimately is going to be the big question, is if Powerball is just, their name is everywhere and we just see Powerball, 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 and it's the same old Disc Golf Pro Tour, that's going to be a problem. That's not what we were looking for. We're looking for something of a partnership that actually pushes the Disc Golf Pro Tour to where it's no longer in its infancy that everyone thinks it currently is in.
Right. Their names being plastered everywhere does not do anything for us on its own. That is for sure. Gary, what do you see happening with this partnership, pros and cons?
Yeah, I think this is going to be as good as the Pro Tour makes it. This could be something where like, oh, this is okay because it was just a kind of a keep the lights on thing, or this could be great if this was an injection of money that they actually do something with. And I mean, I've been very adamant for a while that the Pro Tour needs to improve its ability to go out and pick up those non-endemic sponsors, and this is exactly what they did. Now, I think that their partnership with Pivot, that agency, I think that was really smart. Maybe they realized that we're kind of weak in this area, so we're going to partner with this company. That definitely helped because it connected them over to Jay Finks. And when you have someone who's like a state coordinator for everything over there, and then also is on the marketing board for Powerball and loves disc golf, that's awesome. But one of the biggest pros here is that this is for 2 years, which means they don't have to try to cram everything in the first year, overdo it, do too much, it's clunky, whatever. They can make this work over the course of 2 years to make the first year great, build on it in the second year. I don't see very many big cons. I mean, you obviously have the people floating around the idea that this brings gambling into the sport, but here's the thing, that's going to fizzle out as the time goes on, just like it did with the other gambling things that we involved with last year. But I think this is mostly full of opportunities. They're talking about it's going to be the biggest payout we've ever seen, at an event for the Powerball Cup. And if you watch the podcast and stuff, pros are excited about that. There are like fringe pros that are like, I need to make it into the Tour Championship. Powerball Ace is going to get fans involved. I think that's a great idea for making the events more fun. But they should be leveraging this relationship now going forward to make more relationships. If I'm Sean Jack and I'm Dominic DeFibo, I'm not resting on my laurels. I'm using this as a springboard to get more.
Absolutely. Yeah, that will be telling for sure. All right, Hannah, what are your thoughts on the Powerball deal?
Yeah, so initially when I found out it was the Powerball, I was a little bit confused because it felt like a random sponsorship or partnership for disc golf. But I honestly think it could be great. And like Gary pointed out, it is for 2 years. So you would hope that this year is super successful with the integrations and the updated fan experiences and everything that they're kind of hinting at or maybe trying to promise. But if they don't quite hit all the markers, they've got one more year to still make it worth Powerball's while and to entice Powerball to stay around or invest more money into our game or to the Pro Tour. I think a con is kind of like you guys point out already. People do just assume it's like a DraftKings or like sports betting or gambling. And so I think the execution of this integration is going to be pivotal in kind of calming that fear for some people. Obviously, there's people that are always going to have concerns or not want that to be a part of the sport. But I think once you realize that they're not quite the same thing, then you kind of calms those nerves for some people. Jack pointed out on Staggered Stands last month about all of the community-wide and statewide stuff that Powerball does do as like give back or different initiatives. And so maybe there's some optimization that disc golf can kind of be in partnership with them as a part of that too. And that could go a long way, not just for the sport, but for Powerball's name and notoriety in these spaces.
Yeah, it's always exciting, like, in an off season and, the last few seasons, there's a lot of doom and gloom, certain companies that aren't having a lot of success projecting that, I think. It's good to see new partnerships, new, high payouts, fan opportunities. Always exciting to see that. All right, time to head into our finals, Gary and Hunter. If you've watched previous seasons, we're changing up the rules slightly this year. So Gary and Hunter will be going in on even standing. We're going to make it to where you play to get into the finals, and then the finals is a toss-up. It's head-to-head, even Stevens. So let's head into our final topic here. All right. The Disc Golf Pro Tour has announced the Jomez Pro Series this year, and they state the following as their primary goal. The primary goals of the Jomez Pro Series are to provide Jomez Pro competition, coverage of well-known tournaments, new and exciting courses, and to create a needed event tier between Q Series and regular Disc Golf Pro Tour events. So that's what they're stating. I want to know, do you buy this, or would you conclude that this can only serve as a shield to prevent the Go Throw Tour from gaining any real traction? Because there is at least a coincidence, if not more, that this is arising right after the creation of the Go Throw Tour, and seems like it certainly could be blocking things. We will do a toss up for the who gets to go first as well. So we'll say Hunter called in the air.
Tails never fails.
It is heads. Gary, would you like to go first or second?
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right, take it away.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I think it's disingenuous to just automatically suggest that this was created to block the Go Throw Tour. I think it's a happy, like, oh, does this thing too? Great, because they had to have been in communications with this for a little bit longer than we're all kind of giving them credit for. Plus, if we're all being really honest here, what do they have to block? The Go Throw Tour came out. Everyone was super pumped and excited, but in the very first year, they couldn't deliver on half the payouts they talked about. The pro attendance at a lot of their events fizzled completely. They didn't put out the coverage that they said they were going to do at the same level, especially on like the FPO side. They changed their rules a lot in the middle of the season. The best thing that Go Throw has in its pocket right now is the Tour Down Under and the stuff it does prior to the year with like the stuff in Puerto Rico and Mexico. That's great. It's adding something big time, but the Jomez Pro Series isn't competing with that. I think they had an idea for a while now that adding these extra events allows them to prove tour stops before they ever happen, give tour stops an opportunity to maybe showcase why they should be back on tour or what they can do better. They know they have a prepackaged thing that already works because it's already integrated with the Pro Tour and Disc Golf Network. Like, from a complete business perspective, this makes total sense. I don't think any of them had to care about Go Throw, because anyone's reading the tea leaves last season, about 2 months into the Go Throw experience, they're like, we have nothing to worry about here, guys. They can't even get their website together. They're like, seriously? So I think they also have the backing of like a course design, Dylan Cease owned property, course designed by Paul Macbeth, all the cards. Now, if the Pro Tour came out and said, guys, we're launching the Jomez Pro Skin Series, then we could say they're doing something to maybe go up against what the guys over there at Go Throw have. I think these are two completely separate things. And if anything, they're sitting back going, oh, it also kind of makes it difficult for them. Great. If they really want to make it difficult for them, they would have put stuff on the same weeks, but they left all the weeks still separate so everyone can still play. The hard part of the pros having to decide where they're going to go, but they're going to pick the place with the money.
Yeah, they will go where the money is. All right, Hunter, what are your thoughts?
I disagree with Gary on the point that this has nothing to do with the Go Throw Tour. I agree with, I don't think this has anything to do with like preventing the Go Throw Tour from gaining traction or anything. Like, I don't think they're scared of that after watching last year. But I think the Jomez Pro Series exists because the Go Throw Tour exists. I think that they saw what the Go Throw did and said, hold up, we've got the bigger version of Go Throw sitting here, basically rotting, and you have like the majority of disc golfers don't watch DGN, don't even follow the Disc Golf Pro Tour. They just go on and watch Jomez. A lot of guys won't even know that the Jomez Pro Series events aren't even Pro Tours. People will be clicking on it going, where's Gannon? I wonder why he's not playing this weekend. So I think that it more sparked an idea of like, if we break down the primary goals here, Jomez Pro Series provide Jomez competition coverage of well-known tournaments. Check. New and exciting courses. But still check. And create a needed event between Q Series and regular DGPT event. Fluff. That's, who cares about that one? But what it does do is it provides courses that people will recognize from being passed on tour, or like, the Dylan Cease property, Cactus Rock, stuff like that, where like it's notable. And now it is making a YouTube video that's going to make YouTube revenue for the Disc Golf Pro Tour, and calling it a Jomez Pro Series instead of a Disc Golf Pro Tour Q Series. What that does is it pulls off the standard of a Disc Golf Pro Tour Series, meaning players can show up with more of an expectation of like a B tier or an A tier with Jomez coverage. So the players are still incentivized to show up because a lot of them still have coverage bonuses in their contract of getting on Jomez. Manufacturers still care about that because Jomez still gets eyeballs, right? It's not like Jomez's viewers are going to all of a sudden disappear, and Gannon's probably still going to be at half these things. So let's not even kid ourselves there. And so the manufacturers are still going to care about that. And then the Pro Tour makes monetization from Jomez viewerships without having to put in all the work of a full Pro Tour. I think it's a win all around, but I do think that timing wise, this probably was born because they're like, man, that Go Throw Tour, great idea, poorly executed. We could do it better.
Yeah. Good arguments from both for sure. I do need to lean Hunter a little bit on this one. I'm going to give him the win today. I do think it's a bit too much of a coincidence. And obviously, I would agree with both of you in the sense that it probably wasn't necessarily a block or a shield, or they would have, like to Gary's point, aligned the schedule dates. But to think that the idea wasn't at least inspired, to Hunter's point, it's like, we have this version of Go Throw that does even better. Let's deploy it essentially. I think there's a lot of validity to that. I'll be curious to see what the viewership does, because also to Hunter's point, I think it's valid to say a lot of those Jomez viewers, they might not know the difference. If that feature card's good enough, it'll be just as entertaining to them as any Pro Tour event out there.
Hannah's watching all of these things on repeat. Hannah's stoked right now.
Yeah. The more disc golf, the better.
No, I was thinking of when I was talking, when I looked at this thing, the first person that came to my mind is my brother, because my brother is a very casual disc golf watcher, right? Where he didn't even know Disc Golf Network existed last year when I said something, because he was like, I tried to find it live, I couldn't find it. Like, he had no idea, right? He's the one that introduced me to disc golf a decade ago. But Jomez videos will randomly pop up onto his timeline, and so he'll randomly watch a tournament that happened and bring it up to me. And the only reason is he saw it on Jomez. And I'm like, if GBO essentially, right? I don't know where they're going, but like, let's say they went back to Emporia for a Jomez event, and you have someone like my brother who was in disc golf years and years ago when GBO was on tour. You have a course he recognizes on Jomez. Like, unless they say this is not a part of the Pro Tour, you're like, those fans aren't going to know. And viewership wise, if it's a really good, entertaining round of disc golf, and you have, even if it's not Paul, AB, Calvin, whatever, if it's like Gannon, Alden, Gavin Babcock battling, like, that could still get plenty of views to make it well worth it. I think it could be a really big success for him.
I agree. Yeah. Pretty good passive income. All right. Well, that was the first episode of Debate Night. A lot of fun getting back into things, a lot to discuss this year. If you want to contribute to the discussion, we have a way you can do that. So if you actually scan the QR code that's going to pop up here on the screen, as long as Sal still has from last year, he does. He's always good at his job. I'm also going to make sure I put this in the description and the pinned comment. So we're going to plaster it all over the place this year to make sure you can submit a topic if you have one. It can be anything from current events in disc golf to just broad topics that you'd like to hear everybody's takes on. We're going to have a lot of new guests, probably some new guests starting next week, and we're going to be filtering them in. So make sure to sound off in the comments who had the performance of the week. Who do you think deserved the win if you disagree with who I picked? I want to hear everybody's opinion. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you next time, next week, right here on YouTube.